and welcome to Celia's playlist. I am here today with Alan from Zero to Nightmare. Alan, how's your day going?
So far, so good, Celia. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for dealing with some tech issues with me because nothing goes perfect and everything is live. So, so
No worries.
Alan, tell me a little bit about your musical history. I want to hear a little bit about how you got into music and I guess how you started your project.
Sure. I grew up in Norway, and the earliest memory of music I have is from going to bed as a young child, and my mom putting on this classical music for me. It was one vinyl to put on and on repeat like daily, so I had it ingrained in my head. Loved all the different harmonies and things, and the complexity of classical music. So I think that's really foundational for me. Um, Around 7, I moved to Scotland. For some reason, I ended up getting conned into joining a choir. So I sing in like churches. So that also had an impact. Then later, I moved to the U.S. as an exchange student and was going into engineering from undergrad. Ended up switching to music for a while and entering for classical guitar. At that time, I'd also started playing electrical guitar. So I got some music theory there, and then I chickened out of music because I wanted to pay my bills when I graduated, and I knew I'd have loans. So it was kind of off and on with music, but it was always a part of me. I always had melodies in my head, and I always had these riffs and things that I wanted to do. Um, so after that, after I graduated, I end up playing in some bands, did some small touring here and there, and I guess one of the biggest shows I played was it was in Birmingham, with City Stages,
Very cool.
and recorded with a gentleman by the name of Corey Lowry, who's in brother of a guy in Seven Dust, and he plays in Seether right now, actually.
Oh, very
Um,
cool.
so
I
that
am
was
a
kind
fan
of
of Seether. Very cool.
yeah, yes, the guitar player in Seether. Cool guy. I learned a lot from that, and um, been in the studio a little bit with other bands and pick up things here and there. And then I finally, of 2 3 years ago now, I discovered some old music I'd written, and it kind of reignited my desire to have my own stuff come out. I started playing around with it, getting some vocals down. Noticed my vocals weren't where I wanted them to be, so I ended up taking vocal lessons, and I feel I'm finally at a spot now where things sound well. So that's kind of how it came to be. And I wanted to be the singer of this project because it's my own music.
Hmm.
It's has a lot of meaning to me, and I didn't want it to be a case where I join a band with somebody and then the singer leaves or whatever, and then it's all different, right? So by being the singer, it's always going to sound like when I'm me.
I feel you because it's easier to switch out a guitar than it is to
Yeah,
switch out the vocals in a project.
yeah,
So for the people at home, how would you describe your sound? Because they just heard classical and they just heard
sure.
Seether and they just heard like a whole bunch of different things. So what
Yeah,
direction did you go for your own project?
yeah. I guess I could have been more clear on my
No, no,
direction
no,
there.
no.
Um,
I want them to know.
yeah, yeah. No, I. It's funny. So classical. My dad loved the Beach Boys, so I'd actually listen to them when I was a kid too, until I learned English, and then I found out what they were singing about. And at the time, that was nothing that interested me. Then I became a teen and got real rebellious and got into bands like Metallica and more heavier stuff. So musical direction is more on the heavier side in general. I would say hard rock more than anything. How I would categorize it. I don't like categorizations because I want to be able to do all kinds of different stuff. And I feel like that's one cool thing about today is it seems like a lot of people are more open to different varieties of music. Before it used to be if you were into like metal or whatever, you were into that and you couldn't listen to anything else, right? But today,
Mm.
it's a lot more. People are a lot more open to different things, and I think that's awesome. So yeah, so definitely on the heavier side, general rock. A lot of things to be angry about.
I
Um,
feel you. I feel you. So,
yeah,
believe it or not, I and for many years have listened to hard rock. So I knew what you were talking about when Seether came up, and things like that. But I just wanted to clarify for our
yeah,
audience
of
at
course,
home.
of
So,
course.
because I have all different kinds of people on here. So
Yeah,
in terms of like some of those rock influences, like where does your writing process come from? Because I know that a lot of those songs, it's very like guitar heavy, very like very rhythmic with the drums. So since this is your own project, how did you go about starting to compose everything as one person?
it's been very interesting. As a starting out as a guitar player, you sit there by yourself and you write these songs on guitar, right? And before you get experience, you don't realize that what you're writing isn't as much a song as it's just a bunch of guitar riffs they think sound cool together. So you don't get the whole picture of a song. You need to have a lot of dynamics in a song, right? And you can do a lot of that on guitar, but it's not everything that you put into a song needs to serve the song.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I've been learning over the years is putting everything together. So now I use a program called Guitar Pro, and
Okay.
it's I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's designed originally at least for guitar players. You can
Mm-hmm.
program music into it using tab, which is basically
Yes.
zeros and
Tab, I
ones.
know it is. So for
Yeah,
people that don't know, it's like you're looking at the guitar strings and then there's like a number, and on that number that's when you hit the different part of the obviously like the neck of the guitar, and that's where you hit. So you don't need to actually be able to read staff in music to be able to actually play the song.
right. So while I can get through music on standard notation, it's much faster with tab. But the cool thing about that program is you can do drums, you can do piano, you can do all kinds of things in there. And so instead of recording myself on guitar and then layering on something else during the writing phase, what I'll do is lay down or program in what I'm playing on the guitar, and then add other things as I go. And that way I can play with it with the guitar, right? If I want to lead or whatever or bass line, and then you can hear it together and see what it sounds like. And it's really quick to make changes. And another cool thing about it is I have a lot of happy accidents. I hit the wrong number or whatever on the string. Sometimes it sounds really cool, or I get some ideas. So it works really well for me to do it that way, and that way I can get all my ideas down in one place, um, and then after that record it for real.
I feel you. I feel like a lot of people feel like they're restricted because they can't actually like take the instruments and play them all out and record it like, something that's kind of like a demo. So
Right.
I like that you figured out a way that you can create essentially a demo on the go so that when you go back into the studio and get back like, recording, you can actually take that and use that as like the bones. So
Yeah,
that's a really cool way to do it.
yeah, and it's nice because the sounds now, the samples there are pretty good, so you get a really good idea of what the sound would actually be like. You
Hmm.
can mute guitars and palm mute if you know what that is.
Yeah.
Get different sounds, distortion or clean. You can get all that in there as well as a lot of the dynamic things. So, yeah,
Very cool. I'm gonna have us go on a little bit of a nerdy guitar rant because I feel like that's kind of a thing that I can do here, and it's something that I know enough about to talk about.
sure.
So, the tonality in especially harder rock music, I feel like is a defining factor in the songs that people listen to. And also I guess like when people are trying to define genre, like they usually are like that's one of the big things. So
Mhm.
when you were figuring out what the sound of your project was going to be, like how did you go about figuring out like okay, for like the lead guitar, I want something that's going to be like something higher pitched or I want like chunky bass lines and I want the grit. Like
Sure.
where did you kind of like put yourself on that spectrum?
Um, no, that's a good question. So one of the things that's defined my tone is kind of a I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but when I started um, doing this and my voice wasn't where I wanted it to be, my range was extremely limited, I thought. And so it was really low. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna, I was trying to sing some of my songs with the guitar, and like, I can't sing that high. So I tuned the guitar down. So, and I tuned it way down. So it's like drop A, which standard guitar is in E.
Uh-huh.
So it's pretty low. But then I really liked the sound. And then I found out that my range was actually not that bad after all. But then I just kept it there. So that's one of the defining things. It's quite defining.
That's actually
So
pretty cool. That was a good solution, you know?
yeah, yeah. Now, and part of that was I wanted the dynamic difference, but anyway, again, I like the sound. I like the darker stuff, and it does make it sound a little darker.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like it gives it more dynamics because you can still sing quite a bit higher, right, and make it fit. So, um, and I feel like my music is, yes, it's harder, but it's not the traditional kind of down tuned stuff either. So I don't feel like there's a whole lot of other people doing the exact same thing. So it helps. I feel it helps set me a little bit apart as well.
That's pretty cool. And I want to revisit kind of what you were saying with the vocals because you did mention that you took vocal lessons. What
Still
did
take.
still taking vocal lessons? I mean, it's always great to learn and it's always great to have someone that can mirror back and actually have like, advice on how to like for instance like I don't know which direction you're going with vocal lessons, which is going to be the question, but like I know for a fact that traditional vocal lessons, but also like metal vocals are very different.
Yes.
So like what kind of lessons have you been taking and how has that impacted you and your process?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question. Um, so I wanted to find um, somebody who taught rock singing, not just traditional singing. And I managed to find a guy. His name is Draven Gray out of Colorado, and so it's online. A great guy, and actually a producer as well. So it worked out really well for if you're a singer songwriter. I highly recommend him. Um, but rock singing is quite different than a lot of other types, and I want to be able to have a variety again, dynamics, and being able to sing clean as well as gritty, as well as even getting into screaming and things like that without you know damaging yourself permanently, which you can very easily do. And so it's been extremely helpful. And yeah, if you're getting into any type of more aggressive music, you definitely want to make sure you're doing it correctly.
Oh yeah, I've heard stories, and I always love that. And people may not know this. A lot of the times, people that are in heavier genres like rock singers and stuff, also were classically trained. Like if you think of like Disturbed or like I would assume Evanescence, like
Yeah.
the way that they go about the singing that they do, and especially like the technique, you can hear it in the rock vocals that they were traditionally trained.
Yeah. And, originally I was classically trained when I was a kid. So it's different vocal placements in like choir versus singing in rock, for example. In rock music, right, you have the microphone. It's a whole lot different technique required to sing in a microphone versus like in a choir where you're trying to project. So you can do a lot more nuanced things in a microphone.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so a completely different technique. Um, but yeah, it's been very interesting. A lot more to it than I originally thought.
There's a lot of different ways you could go about that. I see you didn't decide to go the musical theater route. I went the musical theater route, but
Yeah,
I like that, like having the diverse background, especially with having the classical background as well as the newer rock background. It gives you that kind of knowledge source, especially with the fact that you're able to speak to the genre about all of those things, to incorporate that into your writing and your producing. So I want to move a little bit forward on this, just because, like we're coming more towards the end of the interview. So I know that you wrote and recorded your work at home, but I also know that you're in the studio right now. How has that experience been different than working on everything at home?
Sure. So I'm doing most of the instruments and things like that at home, which is a lot easier to do today than
Hmm.
it used to be. Um, the main reason I decided to go to the studio now is for the vocals, because you get immediate, response to your vocals. When you're doing it yourself, you record it, you might think it sounds great, right? And then you listen to it, I'm
Hmm.
like, what the heck was that, right? So it is, it's for me, it's really helpful to get that feedback and work with somebody. So that was the main reason. Hopefully, be done with it soon, but it's exciting.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So I want to move on to like one of like the big questions that I ask on here, and I know that I was going to get into a little bit of the what's it called, of a different topic, but I really enjoyed our guitar topics. So we're gonna move on to like the question I'm asking everyone. So the question I ask everyone on this show is, if someone was getting into music now, what would be your advice? So, what is your advice to someone, any direction, getting into
Sure.
music now?
My biggest advice is first of all, get into music, um, but have an open mind, and whatever you do, be open to input from others. One of the most dangerous things you can say is "I already know that," or shut people out, and that really closes you up. So be open to feedback, listen, and take things in, and really think about it before you respond to somebody, or you say no. I like it better my way, or whatever. That's definitely huge.
That is actually very good advice because I myself learned if I stop talking, then people have a lot of interesting things to say. So, so it's kind of the same, but with music because that's where collaboration comes in because people
Right.
are bringing their own ideas to the table to make something great. So, Alan, we're coming to the end of the interview, and I want to make sure people are able to find and follow you. So, where can they do that?
All right, so I'm on all socials, and I managed to get zero to nightmare for just about everything. So Instagram, TikTok. I have zero to nightmare.com. On Spotify, Apple, and all of the streaming platforms. I'm really excited about this upcoming EP. Um, Actually managed to engage the Czech National Symphony Orchestra for some parts on it. So
That's awesome.
bringing in the classical. So yeah, very excited to see what people think of it, and then looking to play the stuff live.
Awesome. Alan, like I hope that like by the time this comes out that song is coming out coinciding because I want to hear all of the orchestra parts. I'm like
Two
super
songs.
interested. I actually two songs. Yes. I have worked with like the Stanford Symphony and a couple of other people over here on the in the area over here in that space. So it's always super interesting because there's so many dynamics, so many different people, and you can do a lot with the different parts. So I'm excited to see where you go with that. So
Yeah,
I wanna thank you so much for sitting down with me today and hanging out and getting to know me, like and getting to know you. You have such an interesting background, and yeah, thanks for being here.
no, thank you, and really appreciate the time.
Of course, of course. And to everyone, make sure that you're following Zero to Nightmare, and I will see you on the next interview.